So here in previous sessions, I think a lot of our guests have talked a lot about the latest technology and application of 3D GIS. And so in this session, we would focus on the technology for 3D GIS visualization. So first, we would have a quick introduction on 3D scene, where we can visualize spatial data in 3D forms. And then we will have a specific introduction on how to visualize 2D data in 3D scene. And generally, there are two methods to do so. The first one is 3D symbology, and the second one is vector stretch. And after that, we will learn how to make our 3D scene more vivid with particle effects. And okay, here I have a question. That is to say, is it possible to export data set attributes into other readable format? Yes, it's okay. You can export the attribute framework, the attribute dataset attribute into Excel or CSV format. And we will talk about how to do that if we have enough time. So let's go back and continue. So here we will have a quick introduction on 3D scene. Actually, in GIS and even more even in wild applications, we have used 3D scene to stimulate the reality based on a certain spatial hypothesis. And actually, usually there are two kinds of hypotheses. The first one is to regard the whole Earth as a spheroid, and the second one is to take a small area as a plane land. And usually we would recommend use the spheroid hypothesis in GIS application. And we would only use the plane hypothesis when there is no geographic reference for our data set. And by using 3D scene, we can visually demonstrating the appearance and the spatial relationship between varied features, which is much less abstract than our 2D map. And here we can see what kinds of data we can add into 3D scene. So here are 3D models, 2D and 3D vectors, imagery and terrain. And among them, like for 3D model, like oblique photography model, beam model, 3D max model, and point cloud, all of them are directly produced for 3D use. So they will have a great visualization in 3D scene. And the imagery and terrain can directly reflect the land cover and land shape of the real world. So they also look well in 3D scene. But for 2D and 3D vector, that's a different thing. That's here we can say that. Like here, we can simply add beam and terrain together into a 3D scene, or add beam and oblique photography into a 3D scene, and they would integrate it with each other very well, like rebuild our real world. But when we add vector data into a 3D scene, you can see that they only look like this simple shape, and we cannot tell what they represent or what's the meaning of them just by glance. So that we would need some specific visualization methods to make them look better in 3D form. And here we would use two methods, 3D symbology. Like here you can say use 3D symbology to say to show point as those trees, or to give 3D symbol to this tube and pipe. And then for more complicated data or features, we can use dynamic stretch and to make to give them their altitude and the lift height. And both of these way can be easily complete in SuperMap iDesktop efficiently, and also none of them will create new data sets. They are just the visualization effect inside 3D scene, so it would save a lot of storage in real application. And to make our scene more vivid, sometimes we would want to add those dynamic objects into our 3D scene, like fire, fountain, and raindrops. And those features cannot be represented by solid models. So we would specifically use particle effects to visualize them. And particle effects actually is a specific 3D graphic technology. And here we will have a simple touch on it later. And so in this demo, we have provided you a model and a lot of vector data. We would put all of them in a 3D scene and use some 3D visualization methods, as we talked before, to show all the vector data in 3D forms, and then add a particle effect to show fountain on a pool. And that's all we need to do for this demo. Now let's switch back to SuperMap iDesktop. So here we have created a map, and if once we click on to close it, then it would ask us if we want to save the changes, and we can click yes, and then click OK. And now you can see that inside Workspace Manager, under Maps node, you can find the map we just saved. And now we can close all the other windows. And now here, still inside Workspace Manager, we can select untitled workspace. That's our current workspace. And right click on it, choose Save this workspace. So you can get all you have done from the previous demo. So here, simply choose a location to save it and click Save. Here, I won't save mine, but I would recommend you to save your work. And after you have saved your work, then in Workspace Manager, this time, still choose the node for workspace. Remember, it's workspace, not data source. And then right-click and choose Open File Workspace. And here, we would switch to the folder that is called 3D Visualization, which we have shared with you before. And inside it, you can choose a workspace file that is called 3D Visualization. Click on Open. And let me know if you have any questions on this step. If everything's okay, we will proceed. And now here, we can expand data and select all the data sets inside it. And after we select all the data sets, then right click and choose Add to New Scene. Here, directly choose Add to New Scene. And maybe we need to wait for a second. You can see that in the center of this interface, we have opened a 3D scene window. You can see an Earth inside it. And on the right, on the left, you can see inside Layer Manager. Actually, you can see all the layers we have added into this 3D scene. But now we don't know where are they. Don't worry. First, we just need to change the layer order of those data sets first. So you can just follow me. And now, after that, we can select on a ground layer and right-click on it. Here we can see there is an option called Jump to Layer. Click on it. Once we click on it, we would directly move to where we have those data sets. So it's easy for us to find them. And now we need to change the perspective, our view perspective, to see this 3D scene. We can see that if we click on the left of our mouse and simply move, we can span in the scene. If we want to change the perspective, you can push down Control button on your keyboard and keep it, and then left click on your mouse and then drag and use the wheel in your mouse to zoom in or zoom out. Now you can see it in the better perspective. And now because it's night in my area, so the models look dark. Here I will quickly change it. If your model looks okay, you don't have to do this step. So now let's start our visualization. So first, we would assign a 3D symbol to the pool in the center. So here, inside the Layer Manager, we would select the layer that is called pool. And after we select pool layer in Layer Manager, on the top, we would switch to the tab that is called, let me see. We would switch to the tab that is called Style Setting. And then here, first, we need to change the altitude mode for this data set, for this layer. If we haven't changed the altitude mode, then our settings for symbolization won't be effective. So here, change it to absolute. And then for its altitude, we can set it to directly use the value saved in the field that called altitude. And now we can see that this layer has a height, and then we can set the 3D symbol for it. So under Style Settings, go to Fields and click on it to select More Symbols. And inside this Field Symbol Selector, on the very left, we can switch to 3D Field. And under it, we can find a node that is called Field Library 3D. After we click on Field Library 3D, we can find that here are different 3D symbols for waters, and you can choose either one. Here, I would choose still water and simply click OK. Now you can see that here it has a reflection of the sky. If there are models around it, it will also have the reflection for those models as well. So that's simply how to assign a water 3D symbol to a polygon feature. Now let's try to assign a 3D symbol to a light feature. So here we need to go to Layer Manager and select the road layer. And also first, remember to change its altitude mode to absolute. And here for its altitude, we can not only can we use the value from its field, we can also enter a value as we want. Like here, I would set its altitude to be 2 meters. And then we need to set a 3D line symbol. So here, under style settings, go to line symbol, and under it, click on more symbols as well. On the very left, switch to 3D line, and then click on Line Library 3D. Here we can see the names for different kinds of 3D line symbol. Here, as we want to visualize a road, so we would choose highway. And remember to set the width of the highway, or maybe you cannot see the symbol in a proper way. So here, I recommend you to set it as 15 meters and click OK. And now we can see it here, just behind the building model. We can zoom in. You can see that those simple lines changed to this 3D road. And let me know if you have questions for the visualization for these 2 layers. If you don't have questions on them, we would proceed. So our next step is a little more complicated. So here we would have a semantic 3D symbolization. We would set a semantic 3D symbolization for tree data set. So here we would simply first choose tree layer inside layer manager. Right click on it to create a semantic map, and the type should be unique value map. Click OK. And then we have to choose a unique expression. So here we would use category. And now you can see that we still visualize this layer with those 2D symbols. So now, as we want to use 3D symbols, first we also need to change the altitude mode for this tree layer. Change it to be absolute and set its altitude to be 4 meters. And then inside the semantic mapping window, first choose bush, and then on the top, click on styles. And we can click the button for dot style. And here we have open marker symbol selector. Inside it, we can click on a 3D symbol. And then inside the 3D symbol, we can find marker library 3D, expand it. Inside it, we would select the folder for flower and choose the bush symbol. So here we need to set a proper scale for it. Here we would set it to be 5 and click OK. Now, if we zoom in, we can see that here are the 3D symbols for bushes. And at the same, we can set the 3D symbols for tree 1 and tree 2. So first, select tree 1 in semantic mapping window and click on styles button. Click the button for dot style. Still, on the left, click on 3D symbol. And then expand marker library 3D. And this time we're going to the folder called tree. Inside it, choose tree 01 and set the scale to be 7 and click OK. Now let's zoom out to say, okay, then the next one should be tree 2. Select it and also select on click on dot style and click on the button for dot style. Then switch to 3D symbol. Also under tree, but this time we would choose conifer 01 and set its scale to be 5 and click OK. And now that's how it looks like. Now you have know how to set different, how to use 3D symbols to visualize points, to visualize points, lines, and polygon. Let me know if you have questions. If you have problems on install the software, you can send me an email later, or my colleagues would help you through the chatting box. I will share my email address after this session. And now let's continue. Now there are two complicated features need to be visualized. That is the layer for building 2 and another layer for the ground. So the first we are going to visualize the layer for building 2. Select it, and then as well as always, go to the tab on the top. Go to the tab that is called Style Setting, and inside it, first change the clip mode of this layer to be absolute, and for its altitude, use the altitude field. Now, here is one more parameter we are going to set. That is the lift height. Here, we need to set the lift height to be lift field. Now you can see that when the layer is stretched as a 3D model, but it doesn't have any texture. So our next step is to set its texture. Before we set its texture, we need to change the fill color for it so that the color won't have any influence on the final visualization of the of our texture. So here, under style settings, for fill style group, inside it we would find foreground, and click on the button beside it. Here, change the color to be white. And now, as we have a white model, we can set its texture. So that is still on the very right of style settings. Click on texture settings, and it will open 3D texture manager on the right. So here we can see that we need to set both side texture and top texture. And for the side texture, first, we need to choose the texture file. Actually, I have already shared it with you in the zip file, so you don't have to worry. And then if we click on the options for side texture, we can see that we can directly read it from the locations saved inside its field. Or if we don't have the field, to record the location of the texture, then we can select select file, but this time as I have prepared all the data for you. So here we can directly select the field that is called site texture. And then we can set its repeat mode. That should be repeat times. And then for how many times to repeat, we also have tiling U and tiling V to choose. And that value also stored in associated fields. So we can simply select them based on the field name. And then it's similar to top texture. So here we would choose top texture, this field. But for the repeat mode, we would change it to real size. And then for both U size and V size, we would set it to be 15. And now immediately you can see the result inside. You can see the result inside this 3D scene window. And if you are not satisfied with it, you can use your own texture if you have, or you can change those parameters as well. For most of those operations we have introduced in this demo, it's okay to use SuperMap 10i, but we would recommend you to download our latest version later. And now finally, we need to visualize or to dynamically stretch the layer foreground. So still inside Layer Manager, select ground layer, and here first change the altitude mode to absolute, and use values in altitude field as its altitude. And also for lift height, change it to lift field. And then now we also need to change the fill color for this layer. So find foreground and click on the button, change the color to white, and then click on texture setting. And now we can set the 3D texture for this layer. Also, I have saved the location of the texture file inside the field called site texture. So that's a file we're going to use for site texture. And then for repeat mode, that should be times, and choose the site texture repeat U and site texture repeat V. And then it's the same for top texture. Select top texture, and then also for repeat mode, that should be repeat times. Make sure it's repeat times, and then set it to top texture repeat U and top texture repeat V. And that's how it looks like. And now we have visualized all those 2D layers into 3D form. Use SuperMap at its top, and you can see all those results are just shown in this 3D scene. We haven't created any new data inside our data source, so that would somehow save the storage. And the next thing and the final thing we need to do is to add a particle fountain. So particle fountain is different from those vector data or solid models. So we have to create a new data set to save it. So inside Workspace Manager, find data, select on it, and then right-click, choose New Data Set. And then inside the window for New Data Set, first, we need to change the type of the data set. Here, choose CAD. We would use that to save particle objects and set a name for it, like particle. And then we need to set its coordinate system. So remember, do not use the default setting. Usually, as we want to add the particle objects into 3D scene, we would choose its coordinate system to be WGS 1984 and click Create. Now we have created a new data set, new CAD data set, and select it inside Workspace Manager. Right-click. Here, choose Add to Current Scene. So it would be added to the same 3D scene window. Now there's nothing happen. It seems nothing happens because this is an empty data set. So inside the Layer Manager, we would select this CAD data, this CAD layer, and right-click on it. Here, make it editable. Select Editable and click. And now, once we make this layer editable, on the top, we can see there is a tab that is called Drawing. Inside Drawing, we can see that there is a group that called Particle Objects. So here, inside it, we can select Fountain. If you want to draw other kind of particles, like fire or smoke or raindrop, just choose either one you want. So here inside this demo, we would create a fountain. So click on fountain, and then inside the scene, move to the top of the pool and simply click on it. And we have added a fountain particle into this 3D scene. We can right-click on the mouse to stop the drawing. And let me see if you have any questions. Well, I will have a further expression on beam later, just after we complete this demo. So here, we can change our perspective. Now, you can see that I have put this particle in the very center, so it's okay. But if you want to change the location of this particle, you can zoom in and put your mouse inside this particle and find the moving button to change its location. It's okay, and keep on the selection of this particle object, and then right-click on it. Choose Properties. Now we can make this fountain particle looks better. So first, on the right, we have opened this particle object management, and under it, we need to select on the node that is called fountain. And now we can set those parameters. So first, we would switch to particle. We would switch to this particle tab, and inside it, set the height to be 10, and also the width to be 10. But it still looks a little small, so we can change the force for this fountain particle. And here, we have to check Enable Static Force, but for its size, we would change it from 10 to 3. Now you can see that this fountain goes higher. And now we can zoom out. And you can see that is the 3D scene we have created. And now we can save this work. First, inside this 3D scene window, right click, and then choose save the scene. And we would save it inside this workspace. And then on the very top of this interface, go to the very left, you can see a save button. Click on it, it would save this whole workspace. And the next time you open it, here, like you can see, the next time if you open this workspace, that's how you would say. And you can go to this scene node, and under it, find the scene we just saved, and double click on it to open. You can see that's still what we have created. That's how you can save your work. And that's all for this session. Let me know if you have any questions. And you can also going back to our slides, and you can refer into all the steps we have done. And we hope this demo would lead you to a wonderful expression of 3D scene in GIS. And now you can raise your questions in your chatting box. If you don't have questions, later we would move to the final test session. And for the question about the BIM data, yes, all the BIM data, as long as you import BIM data set as long as you import BIM model into SuperMap at its top in a proper way, then you can keep both the model and all those attribute information of your BIM features inside SuperMap at its top, and you can see them as well. And for guidance for installation, you can refer back to the guidebook for this whole workshop, and there are details on how to install our software. I will move these features. I'm not sure what do you mean by what do you mean by move these features, buildings, or trees. But here we can going back to the software, and we can see that here we haven't created any new data sets for roads, buildings, or trees. That's the first. And then if you want to know if we have moved their position, no, we haven't as well. And we haven't changed the attribute for them as well. Oh, and if you want to move it, that's the same as that's the same. For instance, but I would recommend you to move them in 2D map first and show them in 3D map. That's better, because it's hard for you to select a 2D feature in 3D scene, even though it's in 3D visualization. And if you want to do so, for instance, we can choose on tree and click on and add it to a new map. And then inside layer manager, right click to make it editable. And then, for instance, I would select on this point and click to move it. And once I move it like to here, and then to save this result, we can simply make this layer uneditable. And then close this map. We don't have to save it. And then inside this workspace, inside this 3D scene, you can refresh this tree layer. And you can see now, here we have the tree in the pool. But and that's how we can do that. Yes, we can use both satellite images and shapefile. If you want to know how to import shapefile into SuperMap at desktop, I would recommend you to go to the YouTube channel for SuperMap GIS, and there you can find our international training class that would talk a lot about how to import different format of data sets into SuperMap at desktop. And now I think it's time for our session for this session. So I would return this room to our host,